Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we are discussing the state of defense manufacturing sector and is it the dawn of a new era in this particular area. India's defense sector is at a very crucial juncture in its expansion cycle driven by modernization plans, increased focus on security and India's growing attractiveness as a market for defense manufacturing. In terms of manufacturing, the market is dominated by defense public sector undertakings and ordnance factories which have not performed to the expectations so far. Private sector in this area is a newcomer and struggling to keep pace with the foreign competition. Due to several factors, obviously, the government has taken several steps over the years to fire up the defense manufacturing sector with an aim to become self-reliant. Policy initiatives such as Defence Procurement Procedure focuses on IDDM, that's indigenously designed, developed and manufactured equipments, aiming to give greater thrust to Make in India in defence manufacturing. Several other steps such as relaxation in offset policy and FDI norms have also been taken to attract foreign players. Strategic partnership policy has also been rolled out to create capacity in the private sector on a long-term basis. However, there are several hurdles which needs to be overcome still to achieve the aim of attaining self-reliance in design, development and manufacturing in defense sector. For a detailed discussion on this particular aspect, today we have with us a distinguished panel of guests in the studio with us. Let me introduce you to them, starting from Air Marshal N.V. Tyagi. And we have with us Dr. Laxman Kumar Behera, Research Fellow from Defence Economics and Engineering Wing of the IDSA. We also have with us Mr. Bharat Karnad, National Security Expert from Centre for Policy Research, that's CPR. Let me straight away begin with you, Air Marshal Tyagi. And the question which I have in mind for you is the very fact that we have almost 50 defence PSUs as well as the ordnance factories, but the regular observation and complaint from the forces has been that they have not lived up to the expectations of the forces in terms of their requirements in equipments and technology and design as well so far.
Yes, that is correct.
So is that something which is a very riling point as far as this particular sector is concerned? Situation would have been much better if those guys would have lived up to the expectations.
Yeah. Let's not club defense public sector undertakings and ordnance factories together. For ordnance factories, they are doing play a role for the army, and it is little different from what DPSUs are engaged in. And as far as DPSUs are concerned, after about 60 years of handholding, they have not been able to design and develop products which are required by the services. So there is a definite need for increased private sector involvement.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Behera here. Definite need for private sector involvement. The recent reports say that two of the major developments which were done by the DPSUs, involving DPSUs rather, though they have most of the foreign components only, that is the Arjun tank and the Tejas fighter. That doesn't seem to be again doing well in terms of their acquisition by the forces. They seem to be again going for foreign products or foreign technologies. So again, the same question: they've not lived up to the kind of requirement which was put in by the forces, and that seems to have forced us in a corner right now.
Yes, you are right. MBT Arjun was designed and developed by the DRDO, Defence Research and Development Organization, and being produced by the ordnance factories, which are departmentally run organization under the Ministry of Defence. So we have to identify why such a huge program, which is more than 40 years old, has not fructified to the expectation of the Indian Army. So I would rather say that instead of blaming DRDO or the ordnance factories, we need to identify the root causes of the problem.
The lapses in the structure.
I think there is systemic failure, starting from the political leadership, the vision and direction of the political leadership, and the monitoring aspects of the R&D agencies, and of course the production agency. So we have not fixed those issues. So unless we correct those gaps, so I am afraid that our indigenization drive won't be successful. So
okay.
we have to be little careful on those systemic issues.
So those systemic issues. Let me bring Mr. Bharat Karnad on this point here. Mr. Karnad, if you look at the kind of budget which is allocated for these two projects and the kind of amount which has gone into amount of time which has gone into this, the Arjun project was sanctioned in 1974. The Tejas was sanctioned in 1983, and thousands of crore rupees of budget. So, are we in agreement with Dr. Behera is pointing out there that we do have the talent, we do have the wherewithal to go ahead and have those technologies and produce them and give them to our armed forces, but it is the deficiency lies in the structural places, the policy, the structure, and the way it is being implemented.
Look, first of all, you have to have perspective. An aircraft is not a toy that you can design out just 15 days. Most of the major companies, aviation majors in the world, have designed and developed and manufactured thousands of planes. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, literally thousands. Now, when India started out very early in our independent existence, with the Marut HF-24, for instance, that was supposed to be the seedbed for all aviation technologies. And it was supposed to then have a great defense industrial complex flourish around it. What happened? The Indian Air Force was allowed to kill it because of the government's decision to, in a sense, if I may say so, in a very harsh manner perhaps, to pander to the Air Force's inclination to imported aircraft, to kill off the Mark II of the Marut HF-24, entirely indigenously designed by an imported aircraft designer, not imported aircraft. Think of it. We brought in the best designer in the world at the time, Dr. Kurt Tank, who had designed and developed Nazi Germany's Focke-Wulf aircraft, fighter bomber aircraft. And we brought him here. He did a wonderful job. Within 5 years of getting his commission, the first supersonic jet aircraft manufactured, designed and developed anywhere in the world outside of Europe and America was flying over the Bangalore skies. This was 1961.
61.
We have regressed since then so much to where we keep importing aircraft. This is the real problem. I'm sorry. The government has to lay down an iron law to the military services and say, you cannot import anything. You have to, we will give you the responsibility to oversee programs and projects, and you will be held accountable. The service chiefs, the defense secretaries, all these people who have gotten away without any accountability over the last 70 years will have to be made responsible and said, if you don't do it, you go to jail or something, something very drastic, so that their entire careers are on line. Here nothing happens. I mean, no one produces, so what happens is each blames the other, and you end up importing aircraft. Everybody makes money except giving custom to the Indian defense industry. And of course, as I've said in my books, over the years, all we have done is enriched foreign defense industries. We have not grown our own. And when it comes to our own, everybody has excuses why it's not good, why this, why not. Arey Baba, take charge.
So what you're essentially saying is that the military arms, the forces also need to take responsibility in terms of adopting the indigenous technology rather than going for the foreign products. Air Marshal Tyagi seems to be interested in responding to you.
No, I just want to correct one notion that Air Force killed Marut HF-24. HF-24 was an underpowered aircraft. There was no suitable engine. So, in the absence of suitable engine, if you had gone in for Mark II, same thing would have happened as the LCA story.
Okay, let's move a little away from specifics. There can be different viewpoints on a specific equipment or a technology. But if you move on to the next point, which Mr. Karnad has thrown in, is that equal amount of responsibility lies with the forces as well to adopt the indigenous technology. So, do you believe, Air Marshal Tyagi, that on this part forces are also liable?
Oh yes, forces are very much part of the system. Every country should have, of the size of India, should have indigenous program, and we will be very proud if our scientists produce something which is state of the art. And as far as encouraging indigenous technologies is concerned, in LCA, in case of LCA, Air Force was not involved for quite some time. And it was not Air Force decision. It was the Air Force is kept out. And after Air Force has been involved now there is a team there which has been very actively involved in review. The flight testing is done by Air Force pilots. And the order was placed in as early as 2005. And there are 40 aircraft on order. So and only 5 have been delivered so far. The 5th one has just been either delivered or is about to be delivered. So there is what is called over promise and under delivery, from which the forces have been, this is the aspect which forces have been concerned about.
Okay. Let me bring in Dr. Behera also on this. Dr. Behera, again, two viewpoints emerging out here. Air Marshal Tyagi is saying that, over-promising and under-delivery is what the forces are concerned about. And Mr. Karnad is saying that the forces also needs to go ahead and put their best foot forward and try and adopt the indigenous technologies. So, where is the middle path in all this?
I think we have not created the system in which all the stakeholders, be it the users or the developers or the producers or the quality assurance agencies, work as a team. I think there are few projects, the last one being the Dhanush project, in which we are actually trying to absorb the Bofors technology which we acquired in 1980s and produce a new version of the gun. In this project, all the stakeholders came together and they actually did a good job. And in a record time, they came out with a prototype which I believe is working very fine. But if you look at other major projects, be it Arjun tank or the LCA, all the stakeholders actually worked in silos. Nobody was talking to each other. And when you have such kind of structure, obviously the failure is written on the wall.
Okay.
So that we need to have a structure where all the players, all the stakeholders can work together.
So again, it is coming back to the structural policy. Let me bring Mr. Karnad on a second point. Moving one step further is now that some policy initiatives have been taken in the recent past in terms of the DPP 2016 relaxation in terms of FDI norms, in terms of offset policy, then the SPP, the strategic partnership module. So all these policy initiatives, Mr. Karnad, do you believe that these are the way forward now to try and address those issues which have not been addressed, which you're pointing out and other panelists like Dr. Behera and Air Marshal Tyagi are also pointing out to?
In a word, no.
Okay.
The reason being that the government is not at all sure of what it is it wants. It's not sure what Make in India is. Make India is not just screwdrivering, components brought in from abroad, and then you assemble an aircraft, and then you call it Make in India, and pay horrendous amounts of money to foreign companies to keep sending SKD and CKD kits. SKD are semi-knockdown kits, CKD are completely knockdown kits. Now, and they're just imported here, and you put them together, and you say we made an aircraft. That's nonsense. The main thing is design. In any weapon system, in anything, the most important thing is design. Okay. If you're able to design an aircraft or a weapon, a gun, anything, is where you have the proprietary control over the technology. The IPR is yours. You can develop it as you wish in the future. With imported stuff, you can't do anything other than screwdrivering, which is what the DPSUs have done for the last 70 years. So how is it different? All you're doing is replicating the horrid situation that you have with the DPSUs in the private sector. How is it different?
Okay.
So this is the point I've been making it again and again, and it seems not to, for the government, I don't know who is advising the government or what the processes are within the government for them to understand some very simple, basic stuff, and they don't seem to understand it.
Okay. Air Marshal Tyagi, do you agree with this fact that there is the basic flaw still exists in terms of not ensuring that design is ours and IPR stays with us?
See, you got a large number of equipment which cannot be designed and manufactured in India. Can you manufacture C-17 in India? Can you manufacture equipment which is bought in small quantities in India? How expensive will it be to go in for design and development of equipment which only 1 or 2 manufacturers in the world make? But by and large, for smaller equipment, for more common use items, yeah, this is correct that you should have indigenous capability. So IDTM addresses that. IDTM encourages people who, instead of buying equipment from somewhere and selling it in India by just putting a sticker, have to design and then prove that they have their. But today, the capability within the country, outside the government sector, for design is limited to small or medium size projects. For large projects, the people do not have the wherewithal to go in for to take up big development. When private sector comes in full force, yeah, maybe there will be industrial houses who can put aside that kind of money, which is required for
maybe in the near future that might help, but these are the baby steps. That's what you're pointing.
It's not going to happen in near future. It takes time.
A lot of time.
It takes a lot of time.
But these are the baby steps which you say might help in coming around to that particular scenario. Let me bring in Dr. Behera again out here. Dr. Behera, in the first response, you pointed out to the structural lapses which have led to the situation where we are right now. The question is, are these initiatives which have been taken right now, which I was pointing out to Mr. Karnad also, are they going to address those structural lapses, deficiencies, and can we move around them or cross those hurdles and see that yes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel?
See, there is no doubt that the government under the Make in India initiative has taken a lot of reform measures, particularly for the private sector. But unfortunately, those measures have not actually resulted into project awarding to the private sector. So there is a lot of frustration within the private companies. So what I feel is that there is a lack of accountability and somebody, there is nobody who is actually driving the whole process. So that again comes back to the structural issues. So we have a production department, we have an acquisition department. So nobody is actually, and both the departments are not talking to each other. Essentially, one should be driving both the production and acquisition. So that is the structural deficiency that we have. So there have been several models. I believe the government has been examining the past several years, but the key reforms, the structural reforms, has not actually happened.
Okay, the structural reforms have not happened. I'm coming back to Mr. Karnad out here, and it seems Mr. Karnad has a lot more to put into this. But to add on to what you might say, Mr. Karnad, in these policy initiatives, as Dr. Behera is pointing out, that we do need to go ahead and address the structural issues like the issue of accountability, which you also pointed out. But in these decisions which have been taken, initiatives which have been taken, they're giving some thirst to the private sector. And we know that, in one way or the other, the public sector undertakings, specifically the DPSUs, have not performed to the expectations. So what, do you agree that there is no harm in giving a chance to the private sector also through initiatives?
Look, the private sector is the solution. It's not the problem. But what you have to, in a sense, ensure is profit for the private sector. They're not there for charity. I'm sorry. National cause, national interest is all very well, but they want to make profit. Profit is made when they are guaranteed a certain order, quantum of order. If tomorrow L&T or Tata's or Reliance Aerospace or Mahindra's or anybody said, okay, you're going to get an order of 100 Tejas aircraft, they'll set up in no time, they'll have a production line going inside of a year. If the TOT is fully transferred from ADA and so on and so forth, they'll have it and going. Now the point is this is exactly what is missing. There are no firm orders. Everybody is complaining that without orders, we cannot invest in the infrastructure, production infrastructure. So, and DPSUs are sitting there, this is the DPSU, public monies have gone into it. So the government is split. Instead of privatizing the whole damn DPSU, which is completely useless, really all but completely useless, you are having, except parts of it, which are perhaps performing, what you have is this kind of a miasma in which we are caught in, which is you don't get the kind of stuff that you want. Those that are supposed to produce these kinds of stuff can't produce it, and you end up again relying on foreign imported hardware. So this is where the government has to get its head straight, and to be certain in telling the private sector, okay, you get 100 LCAs and so on.
Give them specific orders.
Not specific orders, large quantum of orders to make it profitable for investing in production infrastructure. Not specific orders. This is the problem with the MOD. They have orders in tranches, 20 aircraft, 10 aircraft. Who the heck can produce 5 or 10 aircraft at a pitch? You have to say 100, 200, 300. That's the way to do it. It's quantum that makes for profit. And then they have to be allowed to export. That is the way to do it. Incentivize everything. Not sit on it and say, oh, we can't export, we can't do this, we can't do this. You end up importing.
Okay, let me bring in A. Marshal Tyagi on this. A. Marshal Tyagi, the entire complaint, and as Mr. Karnad is pointing out, that has been coming in from the private players for quite a few years now, is that this process of putting in place the orders is something which is such a long drawn out process that it ultimately saps the private players out of what exactly they might be planning to do, or rather they start losing interest, or then move on to something else as well. So that, as being pointed out by Dr. Behera and Mr. Karnad, is one area. So how can we address that particular problem?
First of all, I fully agree with both of them.
Yeah.
That this is a big problem. The problem is about selecting an entity, and whoever is left out then will complain against that selection. That is one. Secondly, whoever you select, in case of most of the expensive equipment, you are tied down for 30 to 40 years, because that's the life cycle, and then you got to keep feeding the same enterprise. If it fails to perform, you are at their mercy. So in case of a government entity, there are solutions possible within the government. In case of private entity, the government doesn't have the same control. So wherever either a strategic partnership model which is being looked into here, that is one solution. There are similar solutions possible, but it is this is the area on which people have got bogged down.
Okay,
they're not been able to select.
Okay, that's one of the solutions. Also, Dr. Behera, are the changes in that the offset policy, in addition to the SPP, are these changes aimed at addressing this concern only, and will they be addressed?
I think the strategic partnership model is to encourage the private sector participation. But offset policy, I think we have not implemented it very well. Earlier, we wanted offset in any import contract which was 300 crore. Now we are saying that if it exceeds 2000 crore, then we'll ask offset, which I think is a regressive step. On the other hand, countries like Israel ask offsets when the contract is only maybe 50 crores. So offset, I think we have lost hope on that. But at the same time, since the government is talking more of Make in India and giving contracts to the Indian industry, particularly to the private sector, so that policy should be focused more vigorously. And as you pointed out, there is a gap between initiating a tender and awarding the contract. So we have seen that in the last 3.5 years, very few contracts have been awarded to the private sector, and that is a major disincentive to the private sector. So that is one area where the government should put its focus on, and should expedite all the procurement projects which are in the pipeline and award it to the private sector. That will really help them.
Okay, let's quickly wrap up this entire issue, starting with Mr. Karnad. As in, we've spoken about several scenarios and what all has been done, where are the deficiencies, what all. The point is, what all can be done, Mr. Karnad, in your views, in terms of putting things in place here? You've spoken about accountability, you've spoken about how we need to have the design to be done here. Specifically, what all can be done in terms of steps?
Yeah, first of all, offsets are useless. Again, they merely promote the screwdriving technology levels that we are supposed to imbibe. The fact of the matter is that no foreign company is going to give you really advanced technology, and certainly won't give you the source codes which are necessary, the know why rather than know how. So if you don't know why, you cannot easily design your own. That's the whole idea, that they keep you prisoners to their technology, they're keeping you tied to their technology.
Okay.
That's how you keep purchasing. So all the things that I've mentioned and that you've just listed, first of all, get the private sector in. They're profit oriented. They'll do things that DPSUs cannot do, and they're useless, and they just ban the damn thing. The second of all, make the military responsible for any and every project.
Okay. And
they should not be given the option of importing anything. Once you give them the option, that's the thing they jump at.
Okay.
Rather than going indigenous, they'll jump at it. And finally, just make sure that the whole enterprise becomes profitable by allowing exports from day one.
Okay, quickly, your points, Marshal Tyagi, concluding it, accountability seems to be also the scenario here?
No, I'll give 3 or 4 points. First point is about offsets. I feel offsets only promote commerce activity, and they do not serve any purpose. So offset should be, the buyer pays a price for that, and somebody else gets the benefit, and the trade-off is not even. That is one. The second part is, if services have to take responsibility, then the projects have to come under them. The entire ecosystem has to be placed under them. In the present environment, it is not there. The solution is to, first of all, greater private sector involvement, privatize DPSUs, and hopefully we will be.
Okay, Dr. Behera, parting comments from you quickly, if you can sum it up in 30
Accountability
seconds.
and authority should be rested in one place, and that is something we have not actually done for the last several years, and all the reforms actually missed this single point. So we need to create one authority who is responsible for indigenization. At present, there is nobody.
Okay, so clearly it seems there are several solutions to this particular problem at hand. India has a great opportunity to change the status quo and not only achieve self-reliance in defense manufacturing, but also become a key player in the global defense industry. The effective implementation of policy changes is the key to setting the tone for growth trajectory in this sector. To realize these goals, it is important to have close coordination between government, defense forces, DPSUs and industry. And the time to start is now. For suggestions and feedback, you can send them on the email address given on your screens right now. We'll come back next week with a different set of guests and different topic. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.